Post 1, AITA for suing my parents after they sold my grandmother's house behind my back. 5 years after I stopped answering my parents and stopped speaking to my ex-best friend Riley, my life is quieter and better. I have a job I like. I have friends who actually show up when they say they will. I have a small apartment that is mine, bills paid, and a sense of peace I did not have for years. I have not been perfect about staying resolute. Sometimes I still catch myself scrolling the old photos and feeling stupid about what I thought mattered back then. Mostly, I have been proud that I finally put myself first, which is why the text from my mother threw me off so hard. The first one was short and saccharine. "We all make mistakes, life is short, can we please talk?" Then calls, then a series of photos of family dinners. Everything was suddenly warm and sentimental when for years she had been cold and defensive after Riley slept with my boyfriend. You remember how families pick sides in stories like that? Mine picked Riley, and then they picked pretending nothing had happened whenever I tried to talk about it. For context, this is the end of a story that started a long time ago. My boyfriend and I were together for 3 years when Riley, someone I had been friends with since high school, began an affair with him. It blew up everything. My parents chose Riley. My stepfather told me to be grateful I still had family. My mother said I was making trouble where there was none. They treated me like the guilty one for daring to be hurt and angry. My boyfriend left. Riley stayed. I left their home and stayed away. After that, I cut contact. No guilt trips, no more being told I was ruining lives. I rebuilt the days that followed into something that did not revolve around other people's denial. It has been 5 years. I have arranged my life precisely to keep that peace. I meant what I said when I stopped calling. I mean it still. So when my mother started texting this week, I read every message 3 times. Her words were earnest, the usual laundry list of apologies and promises that everything was different now. Then last night my stepfather called. He sounded awkward, like a person taking a risk. He said, "We all miss you, kiddo. We would love to see you." My stomach dropped when he said the words we all dread. We want to put the past behind us and be a family again. If you have been through something like this, you know the little voice that springs to life. It is not a voice of anger. It is the memory of the pattern. The calls asking for dinner after years of silence. The calls that always want something. My stepfather has never texted me a picture of a fancy casserole before. My mom has never asked about my apartment. So I ask myself, why now? I told myself to be reasonable. My friends told me to be generous. My sister-in-law, who is on my parents' side but not exactly on Riley's, sent me a long message about how family is for the good times and the bad, and maybe this could be a fresh start. I kept thinking, if it were truly about apology, why are they only appearing now? That is when someone reached out on my phone that I did not expect, a lawyer's office. The message was brief and vague. It mentioned a recent will and ongoing estate matters and asked me if I had time to speak to counsel who was handling my grandmother's affairs. My grandmother died a while ago. I had been told by my parents that the estate was being worked through, that nothing was finalized. I thought that was true then. I thought it meant patience. When I put the pieces together in my head, the glossy family texts started to look less like apology and more like pretext. If an estate windup is in process, someone could be trying to soften me before dealing with financial matters. Maybe I am cynical, maybe I am paranoid. But after years of being gaslit and told I was the one who overreacted, I have learned to listen to the small warnings my gut gives me. So here I am, asking the internet because I always do this when my family is involved. Am I being petty? Am I being cruel for not showing up to their attempts at hugging things out when they made me feel like I had no right to be hurt 5 years ago? Do I owe them a chance to explain? I have not sent back a yes. I have not scheduled a dinner. I have not replied to the lawyer yet because I am waiting to know what this is really about. Maybe it is a sincere reconciliation. Maybe it is a manipulation that I should see coming. Either way, I am sick of being the one who caves because everyone else wants normalcy. For the first time in years, I am asking if I should bend to the pressure and accept them back, or keep the boundaries that finally let me sleep at night. So AITA for refusing to reconnect with my family 5 years after they chose my cheating best friend over me? First comment: I am so sorry this happened. Trust your gut. You do not owe them quick forgiveness just because they finally decided to be nice. Protect your peace first. Second comment: maybe go slow, meet in a public place and keep it short if you decide to see them. You can hear them out without handing over your life. Take care of you. Update 1. The coffee meeting. I decided to meet my mother for coffee. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation. It was curiosity wrapped in guilt. After 5 years of silence, you start to wonder if maybe people do change. Or maybe you just get tired of fighting the same ghosts every night. We met at this cafe downtown that I used to love before it became our place. When she walked in, she looked smaller somehow. The years had softened her edges, or maybe I had just forgotten how sharp she used to be. She smiled like we hadn't gone half a decade without speaking and said, "You look so grown up." We made small talk for the first 10 minutes. She told me about her new hobbies, which all seemed suspiciously tied to social circles, church groups, book clubs, a pickleball league. I nodded and asked a few polite questions. Then came the pivot. "So," she said, stirring her coffee even though she hadn't added anything to it, "are you still living in that little apartment?" I blinked. "Yeah. Why?" "Oh, no reason," she said quickly. "I just thought maybe you'd outgrown it by now. Maybe bought something?" I felt that familiar old heat crawl up my neck. It was the same tone she used when I was a teenager and she'd just ask why I didn't wear makeup like other girls, or why I was still single after college. Always framed as harmless curiosity, always barbed. I changed the subject, asked about Dad. She smiled too quickly again and said, "He's good. We've been catching up on paperwork." "Paperwork?" "Oh, you know. Sorting through old things. Your grandmother had so many documents." She laughed like it was funny, then reached for her phone, pretending to check a message. "Anyway, we were thinking, it might be nice if you came by soon. Your stepfather really wants to see you." That's when I felt the shift. I can't explain it, but something about the way she said "we" instead of "he" made it sound rehearsed, like there had been a meeting about how to approach me. I smiled, said I'd think about it, and paid the bill before she could offer. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at my apartment building and trying to untangle what had just happened. She hadn't actually apologized for anything. Not for Riley, not for the years of silence, not for treating me like the family embarrassment. But she'd asked about my living situation, my job, my savings, little feelers, like she was checking a balance sheet rather than my well-being. That night I called my friend Dana, the one person who's been with me since the mess. She didn't mince words. "Something's off," she said immediately. "They want something. Nobody goes 5 years without an apology and then starts love-bombing unless they're broke or desperate." I laughed it off at the time, but that sentence stuck to me like static. The next few days brought more coincidences. My stepfather texted a picture of the house I grew up in, well, their house now, decorated for the holidays. "Would love to see you around the table again," he wrote. My mom sent another message about how Grandma would have wanted us to make peace. Then Riley, yes, that Riley, had the audacity to message me on Facebook. "Your parents really miss you. It's time to let go of the past." I didn't reply. I didn't throw my phone into the ocean either, which I think shows remarkable restraint. Over the next week, other relatives started weighing in. My aunt texted, "Your mom is trying so hard, sweetie. Don't be cruel." My cousin chimed in, "You only get one family." All the same recycled phrases I used to hear when I was younger, right before being guilted into pretending nothing had happened. By Friday, I was exhausted. I muted the family group chat. I told Dana I was done thinking about it. Then, just when I thought the week was over, I got an email. It was from a law firm. At first, I thought it was spam, but it was addressed directly to me, full name, correct address. The subject line read, "Notice regarding the estate of grandmother's full name." My heart dropped. I hadn't heard anything formal about Grandma's estate. My parents told me years ago that everything was being handled. I assumed that meant the typical probate bureaucracy. I opened the email. It was short and painfully polite. Dear OP, our office is finalizing the affairs of your late grandmother. Your name appears in relevant documents. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss matters pertaining to her estate. No mention of inheritance. No mention of my parents. Just that vague phrase, relevant documents. I forwarded it to Dana, who immediately texted back, call them. I hesitated. If this was some kind of administrative formality, I didn't want to open old wounds for nothing, but something about my mom's weird questions, about whether I'd bought property, whether I was doing well, kept echoing. I decided to call first thing Monday morning. That night, I scrolled through my mom's recent texts again. One stood out. I hadn't noticed it before because I'd been focused on the sentimental ones. It read, I know things were complicated when Grandma passed. Maybe now we can make things right. I didn't know what she meant by make things right. But I had the sudden, cold realization that maybe making things right didn't mean emotional closure. Maybe it meant business. I'm starting to wonder if this isn't about forgiveness at all, if it's about money. So, am I the jerk for still keeping my distance from my parents when they're clearly trying to reconnect? Or am I finally seeing the pattern for what it's always been? First comment, not the jerk. They sound transactional. Something tells me that paperwork line wasn't small talk. Second comment, they probably hid something about the estate. Don't meet them again without clarity. You're not paranoid, you're learning. Update 2, the will. I called the lawyer first thing Monday morning. His name was Mr. Hanley, a soft-spoken man who sounded surprised I hadn't already been informed of the estate details. Your grandmother's file lists you as the primary beneficiary, he said. We sent multiple letters to your parents' address over the years. My throat went dry. They told me everything was still tied up in probate. There was a pause. It's been finalized for months. Perhaps you should come in. That sentence replayed in my head for hours. When I finally hung up, I just sat staring at my phone, fingers trembling. I hadn't imagined the manipulation. I hadn't been paranoid. They had deliberately kept me in the dark. That afternoon, I posted a small update to the thread, thanking people for their advice. I didn't include details, just said I'd learned there were discrepancies with my grandmother's estate, and I'd be speaking to a lawyer in person. By evening, my phone was blowing up. The first text came from Riley. Hey, I saw your post. Your mom's devastated. You're making her look awful online. Maybe we could meet and talk things through. It took me a full minute to process that she was still following my social media. I hadn't blocked her because I genuinely never thought she'd still be watching. I typed out, "You have no right to contact me," but I didn't send it. 2 hours later, another message. I'm just trying to help. Your parents are worried sick. They said you misunderstood the estate stuff. It's all handled. Don't make things worse by involving lawyers. I felt my stomach twist. Riley had always been smooth. That was her thing. She could say the cruelest things and make them sound like compassion. Back when she was sleeping with my boyfriend, she told me, it just happened because he needed someone to talk to. She was still using the same tone now, pretending she was the reasonable one. I ignored her. The next morning, my mom texted, "Can we please talk? Riley said she's worried about you." That's when it clicked. Riley wasn't just hovering, she was their new messenger. I met with Mr. Hanley later that week. Sitting in his office, surrounded by neat stacks of files, I felt like a kid again, the way I used to feel whenever adults were talking in riddles around me. He slid a folder across the desk. Your grandmother's will, he said gently, signed and notarized 2 years before her passing. You are the sole heir. The room blurred a little. She left me? Everything? He nodded. The house, the remaining savings accounts, her jewelry, and investment dividends. There are also letters she intended to have delivered to you personally. I opened the first page. It was my grandmother's handwriting, loopy, confident, familiar. She'd written, "You always tried to keep the peace, even when it hurt you." Don't let them rewrite the truth once I'm gone. I sat there with tears running down my face while Mr. Hanley explained the logistics. Apparently, after my grandmother's death, my parents had filed an affidavit stating they couldn't locate a will, which allowed them to act as next of kin for the estate's maintenance. They had managed her assets ever since. Managed. That word sounded dirty now. He asked if I wanted to pursue legal representation. I said yes before he even finished the question. When I left the office, I texted my mother one thing: I know about the will. Her response came 5 minutes later: "Sweetheart, don't do this. You're confused. Riley told me you've been talking to lawyers. It's not necessary. Everything's fine." That same night, Riley posted a passive-aggressive story on Instagram, a quote over a sunset photo that read, "Bitterness will eat you alive." My name wasn't mentioned, but the timing wasn't subtle. My aunt called the next morning. "Your mother's in tears," she said. "Riley says you're accusing them of stealing." "You know your mom would never do that." I almost laughed. The same aunt who hadn't spoken to me in years was suddenly calling to defend them. The same Riley who had stolen my boyfriend was now acting as their publicist. My aunt said softly, "You're being cruel, honey. They're family. They'd never hurt you." And for once I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. But I didn't mean okay. I spent the next few days gathering paperwork, emails, bank statements my grandmother had forwarded years ago, anything that showed a trail. I met with another attorney who specialized in estate fraud. She listened, took notes, and said, "If they filed false statements about not finding the will, that's serious. We can issue immediate notices to freeze the estate accounts until verification." When I got home, Riley had messaged again, "Please don't drag everyone through court. Think about how this looks. You're acting vindictive." That was it. I finally blocked her. Mom tried calling again. I sent one last text before silencing her number. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. I don't want to discuss this directly." The paperwork went out that Friday. Certified letters to my parents' address, official notification that the estate was being reopened, and a legal order requiring them to turn over all financial documentation related to Grandma's property. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still, like the world had stopped spinning long enough for me to catch my breath. For years they made me think I was dramatic, ungrateful, cruel. For years they told everyone I walked away from family for no reason. And now, finally, I had something tangible. A document with my grandmother's signature saying, "I see you, I believe you." Riley posted another quote that weekend: "Some people never change because they refuse to see their own faults." I almost replied with, "Exactly." Instead, I smiled, closed the app, and waited for the next call. This time from my lawyer. First comment: "They're terrified you've uncovered something real. Keep every message, especially from Riley. She's clearly being used." Second comment: "Not the jerk. This isn't family drama. It's theft. Let your lawyer handle it and don't warn them again." Update 3, the house that vanished. It's been 3 weeks since the lawyers sent the notices. For a while, everything went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace. It means plotting. Then the emails started rolling in from my attorney. At first, it was just routine communication, confirmation that the certified letters had been received, acknowledgement from my parents' attorney, a few formal back-and-forth exchanges. But then, buried in one of the attachments, there was something I didn't understand. A property transfer form with my grandmother's address. My stomach dropped when I saw the date. The sale had gone through 3 months before Grandma passed away. I reread it 5 times, hoping I was misunderstanding, but it was clear as day. My parents had sold Grandma's house while she was still alive, while she was hospitalized. I called Mr. Hanley immediately. "Is that even legal?" I asked. He sighed. "Only if she signed the documents willingly or if they had legitimate power of attorney." And from what I can see, it looks like they used a temporary POA that expired before the sale was finalized. So, it's fraud? It's looking that way. The room spun a little. I sat down and stared at the floor, trying to process it. My grandmother had been in and out of the hospital during that time, heavily medicated, barely lucid. There was no universe in which she could have understood what she was signing. The worst part? The sale price was well below market value. They hadn't just stolen from me, they'd liquidated her home for pennies on the dollar, probably to make it easier to hide the money. I asked the next question before I even knew it was coming out of my mouth. Where did the money go? Mr. Hanley's voice softened. That's what we're going to find out. 2 days later, my mom texted me. Can we please talk? You're making things worse than they are. You don't understand what we went through when your grandmother was sick. It was followed by a second message. Riley says you've been telling people we stole from you. That's a cruel thing to say about family. Riley. Always right in the middle of everything. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the texts to my lawyer, who replied, "Do not engage." The following week, I got the full story. According to the financial investigator hired by my attorney, the proceeds from the sale of Grandma's house had been deposited into a joint account shared by my parents and Riley's mother. Apparently, they'd used her as an intermediary to avoid detection, then funneled part of the funds into a family trust. The trust had one beneficiary, my stepfather. When I read that line, I had to laugh. Of course it was him. Of course the man who spent his life bragging about his non-existent business ventures had his name all over this. I forwarded the findings to my parents' lawyer and waited. That weekend I went out with Dana to get my mind off things. It didn't work, not really, but it was nice to pretend for a few hours that my life wasn't a courtroom drama. Halfway through dinner, Riley walked in. She saw me immediately and smiled that same self-satisfied smile I remembered from the night everything blew up years ago, the one that said, "I got what I wanted, and you can't touch me." I felt Dana stiffen beside me. Riley sauntered over, all fake sweetness. "Hey, stranger," she said, like we were old friends. "Heard things have been crazy. I told your mom you'd come around once you cooled off." Dana started to say something, but I raised a hand. "No," I said calmly. "You don't get to talk to me. You don't get to insert yourself in my life again." Her smile faltered. "You're overreacting. This lawsuit stuff is out of control. Your parents are heartbroken." "That's funny," I cut in. "They didn't seem heartbroken when they sold Grandma's house while she was still breathing." She froze. For the first time in a long time, Riley didn't have anything to say. She just stood there, blinking, mouth slightly open. Then she muttered, "You're sick," and walked away. Dana exhaled slowly. "I'm so proud of you," she said quietly. The next morning, my mom called again. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, sobbing, "You're tearing the family apart. You don't know what your grandmother wanted. She would never want you to take us to court." For a moment, I almost felt guilty, until I remembered the letter my grandmother wrote me. "Don't let them rewrite the truth once I'm gone." That same day, Mr. Hanley emailed again. His message was short and to the point. "We've filed a motion for restitution. The court has accepted our claim of fraudulent transfer of property. Your parents' assets are now under review." It hit me like a thunderclap. This was real. I wasn't just standing up to them emotionally anymore. I was holding them accountable, legally and publicly. I sat in my apartment that night and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of exhaustion. Out of the release that comes when years of gaslighting finally unravel into something solid. Proof. 2 days later, Riley posted a long Facebook status about betrayal and people who weaponize grief. A few of my old classmates commented with the usual platitudes, "Family's complicated," and "Hope everyone can heal." But one person, someone I barely remembered from high school, wrote the only comment that mattered. "Maybe the people who hurt you the most don't deserve access to your healing." It got dozens of likes. Riley deleted the post. That was when I knew things were finally starting to shift. For once, people were seeing them, and me, clearly. And I was done hiding. First comment. "Not the jerk. They defrauded your grandmother and stole from her estate. That's not family drama, it's criminal." Second comment. "The courage it takes to stand up after years of manipulation is huge. Keep everything documented. Riley's probably next to crack." Update 4. The family meeting. The summons went out last week. My lawyer said it was routine, just part of the discovery process. But nothing about this felt routine. It felt like a storm was brewing, one I'd been waiting years to face. Then on Saturday morning, I got the message I knew was coming. Your mother would like to meet, just talk. No lawyers. At first I ignored it, but after a few hours, curiosity gnawed at me. I told myself it would be closure, that maybe I'd get the apology I'd never gotten before. So I agreed. We met at my parents' house. I hadn't been there since I was 23. The second I stepped inside, it felt smaller, cluttered, dusty, full of ghosts. My mom opened the door, eyes red like she'd been crying for days. My stepfather stood behind her with his arms crossed. He looked irritated, not remorseful. We sat down in the living room, and I waited for someone else to speak first. My mom started with the same trembling voice she used whenever she wanted sympathy. Honey, we never meant for any of this to happen. You don't understand the pressure we were under after your grandmother passed. I didn't respond. I just looked at her. She went on, the house was falling apart, the taxes were overdue, and we couldn't afford it. We only sold it to cover the bills. You sold it for half its value, I said evenly, and you did it while she was alive. My stepfather snorted. Don't start with that nonsense. We had power of attorney. It expired 3 weeks before you signed the documents, I said, watching his smirk falter. You didn't have the right. You knew that. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. My mom finally spoke again, voice breaking. You think we're monsters? After everything we did for you? That old guilt tugged at my ribs, the reflex to soothe her, to apologize, to take on the weight. But then I remembered every Christmas I spent alone, every birthday text that went unanswered, every rumor they spread about me being difficult and ungrateful. So instead, I said quietly, I don't think you're monsters. I think you're people who made choices, and now you're facing the consequences. My stepfather slammed his hand on the table. You're tearing this family apart for money. 5 years ago, I would have flinched. I would have cried and begged them to understand me. But this time, I just leaned back and said, No, you did that when you stole from Grandma and lied about it. He froze. My mom looked down at her hands. Nobody spoke. Finally, I stood up. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect, about truth. I'm done protecting people who never protected me. As I walked to my car, I saw someone sitting on the porch swing. It was Riley. She stood when she saw me, fake smile plastered on her face. So that's it? You're just going to ruin everyone's life? I almost laughed. You mean holding them accountable? She rolled her eyes. You've always been dramatic. They're your parents. What kind of person sues their own family? I looked at her for a long moment, at this woman who'd betrayed me once, and now again, like she'd made it her life's mission. You know, I said, a few years ago I would have begged you to see my side. I don't need to anymore. And I walked away. That night, my mom sent one last text. If you do this, we'll lose everything. Please think of the family name. I typed back, I did. That's why I'm doing this. Then I blocked her number. The next morning, my lawyer called. He'd received word from the court. Preliminary judgment was in our favor. The sale had been deemed invalid, and a restitution hearing was being scheduled. Looks like your grandmother's wishes will be honored after all, he said. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there for a long time staring at the ceiling, letting the reality of it sink in. I wasn't scared anymore, not angry, not sad, just free. A week later, Dana forwarded me a link to a local Facebook group. Someone, probably Riley, had posted about a selfish relative suing her dying parents. The comment section was split, half of them gossiping, the other half defending me with facts they'd clearly read in public court records. The tide had turned. People finally saw who was who. That evening, I lit a candle by my window, something my grandmother always did when she wanted to clear bad energy, though she'd laugh at how trendy that phrase sounds now. I opened her letter again and reread the line I hadn't noticed before. Peace doesn't mean everyone likes you. It means you can live with yourself when they don't. I smiled. I finally understood. First comment. That family meeting was just another manipulation attempt. You handled it perfectly. Calm, factual, and detached. That's power. Second comment. Riley showing up like a guard dog for your parents is wild. You've grown so much from the first post. Keep those boundaries firm. Update 5, restitution and release. The restitution hearing happened this week. I'd been preparing for it for months, but still. When the day came, I woke up feeling like I'd swallowed rocks. Mr. Hanley met me outside the courthouse, calm as ever, holding a thick folder of documents. "This is the last step," he said. "After today, they can't take anything from you again." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed it until I saw my parents walk in. My mom looked smaller somehow, her hair pulled back too tightly, face pale under the fluorescent lights. My stepfather walked beside her, trying to look confident, but he was sweating through his shirt. And behind them, like a bad omen, sat Riley. Of course she was there, in the back row, arms crossed, glaring like she had something at stake in all this. Maybe she did. She'd chosen her side long ago. The judge called us to order. The case was simple enough on paper. Fraudulent sale of property, misappropriation of estate funds, and attempted concealment of a valid will. But in practice, it was years of gaslighting, manipulation, and lies being dragged into the light. When the evidence was read, the expired power of attorney, the underpriced sale, the money funneled through Riley's mother, I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired, like I'd been carrying a weight for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. My parents' lawyer tried to spin it as a family misunderstanding. He actually said those words out loud. The judge frowned. A misunderstanding doesn't involve forged signatures and missing funds. My mom started crying quietly. My stepfather glared at me like I'd stabbed him, and when the ruling finally came, it was almost anticlimactic. Judgment in favor of the plaintiff. The defendants are ordered to repay the value of the property, as well as cover legal fees for both parties. Estate assets will be frozen pending full audit. There it was, years of pain summarized in one crisp paragraph. Outside the courtroom, I expected a confrontation, but none came. My parents left through the side door, avoiding me. Riley, however, lingered. She walked up, smirking faintly. "You really think you won?" she said. "You just destroyed your family." For a second, I almost laughed. She said it like it was supposed to be an insult. "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "They did that themselves. I'm just cleaning up what's left." She opened her mouth, but I was already walking away. That was the moment I realized I didn't need them to see my side anymore. They could twist, project, and lie all they wanted. It didn't change the truth. That night, I went home and opened the last letter my grandmother had written me, the one the lawyer had held onto until the case was settled. It said, "I hope when you read this, you've stopped apologizing for surviving. You always saw people clearly, even when they told you not to trust your eyes. Don't dim that light just because others are afraid of it." I sat there crying quietly, not from sadness this time, but from relief. I'd spent years thinking strength meant forgiveness, or keeping the peace, or pretending things didn't hurt. But now I knew better. Strength meant looking someone in the eye and saying, "You don't get to hurt me anymore." A few weeks later, my aunt called. She said my parents had put their house up for sale to cover the legal debt. "They're saying you ruined them," she added. "I didn't ruin them," I said softly. "They just finally ran out of people to exploit." There was silence on the line. Then she said, almost reluctantly, "Maybe you're right." And there it was, the faintest crack in the family narrative, the start of truth leaking through. A month after the ruling, the restitution came through. It wasn't just money, it was acknowledgement. The estate was restored in my name, and the judge ordered an official record correction. My grandmother's will reinstated exactly as she'd written it. I used part of the restitution to set up a scholarship fund in her name for women studying small business management. It felt like something she would have done herself. The rest I saved. Because after everything I'd been through, financial independence felt like the purest form of safety. At a distant cousin's barbecue, one I almost skipped, someone said, "You know, you could have handled all that privately. Didn't have to take your parents to court." I looked at them calmly, setting my drink down. "We tried privacy," I said. "Privacy is what let them steal everything in the first place." The cousin blinked, muttered something, and walked away. Dana squeezed my shoulder. "You handled that perfectly," she whispered, and I realized she was right. The old me would have cried, explained, justified. The new me didn't need to. First comment, "This whole saga could be a movie. You went from being the scapegoat to the only honest person standing. So proud of how you handled yourself." Second comment, "Love that you used the restitution to honor your grandmother. She'd be proud you protected her legacy and yourself." Final update, 1 year later. It's been almost a year since the court ruling. If you had told me then that I'd feel peace, not victory, not satisfaction, but genuine peace, I wouldn't have believed you. After the hearing, I took a break from everything. I stepped away from social media, moved to a smaller town near the coast, and started focusing on rebuilding my life quietly. It's funny, for so long, my world revolved around what other people said or believed about me. I used to check every rumor, every whisper, every family post just to see if they were still talking about me. Now I don't even think about them most days. The restitution money came through in full. I used part of it to open the Lila Foundation, a small scholarship fund in my grandmother's name for women starting their own businesses. The first 3 recipients just finished their first semester, and one of them sent me a handwritten letter thanking me for believing in women who don't have anyone else to believe in them. I cried when I read that, because that's exactly what Grandma used to say. When people stop believing in you, borrow a little of mine until you find your own again. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. My parents didn't appeal the judgment. I think they just ran out of money. And fight. The house sold 6 months ago. I didn't buy it back, though people told me I should. I didn't want it. That house doesn't feel like home. It feels like an open wound that's finally scarred over. From what I hear, my stepfather left town shortly after the sale. My mother moved in with one of her sisters. Neither of them has tried to contact me since the day I blocked their numbers. Riley, however, did. She sent an email in April full of self-pity. "I was young and stupid," she wrote. "I didn't realize how deep all of this went. I miss our friendship." I never replied. Not out of anger. I just didn't see the point. I don't need an apology from her anymore. Closure doesn't come from the people who hurt you. It comes from deciding you've had enough. The best part of all this isn't the money or even the justice. It's the quiet. No more walking on eggshells. No more defending myself to people who never wanted to understand me. No more carrying guilt that doesn't belong to me. I used to think that family meant obligation, that no matter what they did, you had to forgive, to keep showing up, to keep fixing what they broke. But I finally understand what Grandma meant when she said, "Family are the people who want you to heal, not the ones who keep reopening the wound." And by that definition, I have a family again. Dana's still here, the sister I got to choose. We talk every day, laugh until midnight, make pancakes on Sunday mornings. She told me recently, "You're the calmest person I know." I laughed because for most of my life I was the opposite, but she's right. I am calm now, because for the first time, I'm not bracing for the next betrayal. The final audit from the estate wrapped up last month. The court ruled that every cent stolen must be repaid to the estate before the remaining assets could be closed out. My lawyer said the judge even remarked that my grandmother's story should be taught in ethics classes. It's strange hearing your family drama summarized like a lesson plan, but I guess that's what it became. A lesson in boundaries, truth, and courage. When I visited Grandma's grave for the first time since all of this ended, I brought her favorite flowers, dahlias, and her old silver locket. I told her everything. About the court, the scholarship, the peace. About how I finally understand why she left me that letter, why she trusted me to stand up when everyone else sat down. And then I told her thank you. for loving me when nobody else did, and for leaving me the strength to love myself when she was gone. The wind picked up, and I swear for a second I could smell her perfume, lavender and soap. Last week, I ran into that same cousin from the barbecue, the one who'd told me I could have handled things privately. He smiled awkwardly and said, "You know, I didn't get it before, but I do now." "You did the right thing." I didn't gloat or rub it in. I just said, "Yeah, I know." And it was enough. I don't check the old family Facebook pages anymore, but someone sent me a screenshot of a post from my aunt. It was a quote graphic that said, "Truth doesn't destroy families, lies do." No context, no tags, but I think we both knew what it meant. I'll end this the same way Grandma ended every letter she ever sent me. Be brave, be kind, and don't let the wrong people make you small. If you're reading this and you're stuck in a cycle of guilt, I hope you know. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to walk away, rebuild, and start again without the people who broke you. Sometimes peace isn't about making things right. It's about deciding who you'll never let wrong you again. First comment. This was one of the most satisfying arcs I've ever read. You didn't just win, you healed. Your grandmother would be so proud. Second comment. That last line hit hard. Peace isn't about making things right. It's deciding who you'll never let wrong you again. I'm saving that one.